So thanks for joining today's webinar on STP innovation. There's been a lot of buzz around blockchain this year and actually in years past as well. So we thought we would use this time today to actually kind of share our insights on how we think this technology is going to make straight-through processing of B2B payments and invoicing more achievable. And we'll do that by kind of giving some context around that and then actually sharing 3 predictions as we head into 2018. So just some quick introductions. My name is Carrie Klaus, and I sit on the product marketing side of the house at Globus. And at Globus, our core is really centered on accelerating the invoice-to-cash process. So regardless of which industry we're talking to or which country we're in, there's a common theme that every company wants to get paid faster, and that's really what we're helping our clients do today. So we have a global client base who in turn have millions of business users, both from the SMB side all the way up to large enterprises, that really are using our solutions on a daily basis to manage their invoices and submit their payments. So our approach is a little bit different than others who fall into the invoice-to-cash or the AR automation space. We have a firm belief that in order to improve the supplier's AR problems, you really have to help your customers improve their AP problems as well. So because of this unique approach, our clients have achieved really high adoption of their digital invoicing solutions. So a lot of them, again, specifically in the enterprise space, it's not uncommon to see 90% of those enterprises using the digital solution as their kind of default invoicing and payments option. And because of this, you can see on the numbers that we have some significant, dollars being processed and the amount of data that's actually coming through the Globus solutions. So before we hop into the predictions, I thought it'd be helpful just to set the stage a little bit. Blockchain, has clearly taken over all of our news feeds and seems to offer this utopia, where trust is restored and all of these seemingly disparate pieces come together to work in, this magical harmony. Bitcoin's price increased tenfold in 2017. We just saw it soar, above the $10,000 mark. Yet there's still a debate on what exactly, Bitcoin is. So it's been, blockchain is often referred to as kind of the invisible technology and this magic block box of trying to figure out, again, defining exactly what it is. So, is it a digital store of value? Is it a revolutionary payment method? The promise of a completely new blockchain-based financial system? And interestingly enough, for all the headlines and kind of the touting of the Bitcoin billionaires, the underlying technology really hasn't evolved that much in the past year or so. So scalability and transaction cost are actually 2 things that still remain a top concern, specifically talking about Bitcoin. And again, when we look at it from a supplier perspective, clearly 2 things that would have most suppliers turning the other way. Others are stepping up on, the cryptocurrency front. So the new kind of hot one is the Ethereum, for example, and it's actually touting that they've solved some of the problems of Bitcoin and are now offering, a far better solution or platform. But it's not without faults either. So some of us may have never heard of CryptoKitties, but it's a game that's actually built on Ethereum's blockchain, and it actually has players spending thousands of dollars worth of Ether, which is Ethereum's currency, on digital cats. So there's a problem. Although they're bringing in, again, all of these transactions and users are seemingly using their platform, the game is so popular that it's actually clogging the network. So again, another problem that makes, suppliers and businesses kind of cringe when we start to hear things of, again, scalability and network congestion. So the question is there really hope for this platform of truth, or will the hype continue to build, without the technology to make it a reality? So if we reverse back a year, we can actually see, a slew of blockchain predictions. And again, we're starting to see these come out for 2018 as well. Some of these have come to fruition. And some have, just a few more weeks before they become a bust, essentially. So privacy and scalability were big topics around this time last year, specific to blockchain. So there has been some advancements on the privacy front, specifically regarding, who has exposure to what and how those identities are validated. And scalability still seems to have some room for improvement, obviously based on, again, some of those use cases around Bitcoin and the Ethereum as well. One of the most interesting predictions I think highlighted here is that blockchain tech will become boring. So when you start to dig kind of beyond the mainstream headlines and get to the tech folks who are actually thinking beyond, Bitcoin and CryptoKitties, there's a consensus that once a technology becomes boring, that's when it actually starts to become reality. So addressing, real world business problems. So Bitcoins, for example, sound fun, CryptoKitties sound fun. Pollution permits, land registry, payment reconciliation, not so much fun, but again, massive problems that need to be addressed. And when we look actually at specifically at how suppliers and corporates were responding at this time last year, we see that there was actually not only a lack of investment, but also kind of a lack of understanding. So there was a study by Ike Group that showed over 80% of respondents said that they were unfamiliar with the term blockchain, and that they had little understanding of how it could or would impact their business. So if we fast forward kind of into where we are today, we can see that there's been, a substantial amount of learning that has occurred this year specifically. So in another report done by Juniper, they found that 50% of the world's big corporations are now considering blockchain technology. So when with 2/3 of those actually expecting some point of integration into those systems by the end of 2018. So again, traditionally these, large corporations are the ones that kind of, again, follow the innovation suite and have the resources and the funding to kind of initiate those learnings earlier than others. So again, this is kind of showing that not only do we have some understanding, but if 2/3 of them are expecting integration by 2018, that we can make the assumption that some plans and strategies are in place to make that reality, in the coming year. And there, while there's still some blurry lines on kind of how all the pieces will come together, I would say there's hope on the supplier side that blockchain, will be the answer to some of these nagging problems that have yet to be solved with, the technology that's available today. The image here shows kind of the key characteristics associated with blockchain. And what's interesting, I think, is that regardless if it's actually being thought of as blockchain or a key component of blockchain, I would say some or all of these, are on the supplier's radar for improving how operations are done. So the push to all things digital, the need for real-time data versus batched, consistent visibility across the supplier and the buyer side, all of these things that we're hearing from our clients, as well as the broader market. Again, maybe not in the context of blockchain, but definitely things that from a strategic initiative standpoint are moving forward. Same thing, I think, on the value that blockchain promises. So again, transparency, efficiency, automation, trust, all words that, are top of mind among any major supplier. I think an interesting note regarding trust, the idea of blockchain is to actually remove trust from the equation. So because with blockchain, shared and uneditable data basically means it is what it is. So some are calling it a trustless operation, which is interesting. And again, all of these are top of mind for businesses that are processing thousands or millions of transactions per month. So if we look forward into 2018, what does 2018 have in store for blockchain, specifically from a supplier's perspective? 2018, we think will really be the year that blockchain technology begins to be applied more broadly to wide-reaching business problems. So, for example, at Globus, our vision is to automate the entire invoice-to-cash cycle with straight-through processing, or STP. And we really see some blockchain foundational elements as a way to accelerate that vision of STP. So not to get too much into the weeds, but I wanted to provide just a little bit of context, and then we'll move into the predictions. But a lot of the blockchain hype has really been around, again, cryptocurrencies and consumer use cases. So we thought it would be helpful to kind of map out our thoughts of how this could, or what we feel will, impact kind of what's near and dear to all of us, and that's the processing of B2B invoicing and payments. So the basic notion of blockchain, is this peer-to-peer network where values are exchanged, locked in, and shared among those who have been granted access. So essentially, it's replacing kind of the siloed document, data, and event elements that both the supplier and the buyer have today, with a much more kind of collaborative, yet still secure approach to sharing that information. So today, invoices are created based on the supplier's general ledger and then distributed to the buyer, most commonly in some type of document-based format. So whether it be paper invoices, PDFs via email, online PDFs, etc. From here, the buyer has to ingest those invoices into their systems after, doing some manual manipulation to make those align to their system and their general ledger requirements. And then moving them through the process of, review, approval, and payment workflows. So the challenge here, and it's been a long-term challenge, is really the disconnect between the general ledgers. So this misalignment, leads to a lot of manual processes for both the buyer's AP, again, in terms of ingesting those invoices and allocating, and then back into the supplier's AR. So as those payments come in, how are they reconciled against, specifically to that invoice level? And while there's still a lot of work to be done to move kind of to this full state of automation that we have pictured here, we really do predict that a few of these key components that I've highlighted are going to come to fruition or start to come to fruition as we move into 2018. So our first prediction is that smart contracts will make auto verification a reality. So the idea here is that contracts will execute automatically when conditions are filled, meaning that payments will be made or deliveries dispatched, basically anything else that's typically defined by a contract. So if we simplify it down to its fullest and we think of kind of a vending machine analogy, you select your product, you make your payment, and you automatically receive your selection. There's no waiting, there's no in-between middleman, you get what you pay for. We're starting to see there's some industries who are piloting the blockchain smart contract systems today. So for example, the insurer AIG has actually launched a system to oversee the creation of pretty complex insurance policies, which also require some international cooperation. So again, not only complex from a creation standpoint, but also the visibility standpoint and who has access to what, and again, kind of bringing in, across different regions as well. Again, the goal here is to, eliminate those manual workflows of creation and verification, which is a major task, for both the supplier and the buyer. So in terms of expected value, specifically when looking, at B2B payments and invoicing, this would essentially eliminate, the costly and time-intensive process of manually validating, that I've received the products and services that I've signed off for, and therefore I can move forward with the payment. So moving into our next prediction, this is around the shared ledger. And the thought is that this will deliver a single source of truth for both the supplier as well as the buyer. So if we think of how, Google Docs or SharePoint has kind of changed the way we collaborate with our peers on documents. We have one shared document with version control that everyone can see. And again, it eliminates either redundant documents or having, again, either inaccurate or conflicting data that's inputted into that document at the same time. So this is the same kind of in theory of what blockchain will do for the reporting of events between parties. So again, this replaces kind of the individual ledgers that are maintained by each company and replaces them with kind of a common, distributed, and important to state legally binding ledger. So there's a few use cases of shared ledgers that we're starting to see come to fruition, specifically around some of the financial services enterprises. And really it looks like they're doing this, through some in-house models as well as some partnerships to move into kind of a proof of concept state. So there's one, the New York Stock Exchange and Goldman Sachs has actually developed a blockchain-based system for payments and transfers of securities. So again, it's still fairly new, so it'll be interesting to see how that operates and the efficiency gains that they get there. But again, these are some of the examples. There's other kind of non-asset examples as well. So things for audit trails, again, documents, all of those things can be integrated into this kind of shared ledger vision. And so then the value is that, with blockchain, the reconciliation of ledgers and its associated tasks, such as, exception handling, they basically disappear because a single, logical ledger means there is nothing to reconcile. So this idea of kind of a common distributed ledger is a major enhancement when we start to think about, invoice-to-cash and what's required to achieve a state of straight-through processing. And then our third and last prediction is really around, again, from an integration standpoint, and how API integration will fuel machine-to-machine processing of invoices. So, the idea of machine-to-machine has been on the horizon for some time, and we're starting to see kind of how this direct connection can bring significant efficiencies. So there's some really cool things happening in, for example, the farming industry, which again, when we talk about, applying boring technology to boring industries, I wouldn't say that, farming is typically looked at as kind of a high-tech, user from a technology standpoint, but they're actually doing some really cool things, again, from a machine-to-machine standpoint. So, for example, there's some companies that have actually installed these monitoring units, and they're being used to automatically capture and control the water based on specified levels and conditions. So essentially, instead of someone driving around to monitor and manage these water resources, the system is now actually fully automated and just monitored kind of at a higher level. So, again, this is kind of the same thinking that we think will change the way invoices are processed today. So the definition of SDP is, no paper, no human intervention, and automated financial actions. So while this process will be, guided and monitored by the supplier's AR and the buyer's AP, the manual tasks such as, invoice creation, distribution, manipulation, importing into the systems, the allocation, payment, and then eventually the reconciliation will all be automated. So, in 2018, we're predicting that the API strategy around enabling this automation will continue to evolve across the entire ecosystem. So there's a lot of legacy systems here that need to be addressed. Billing, ERP, e-invoicing, payment processors. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it is becoming a viable way to, again, remove kind of these manual and error-prone handoffs that are, fairly commonplace today. So again, real-time connections between, AR, AP, and all of those other legacy systems will really be required to achieve the value of blockchain. And we really see that, APIs will be the preferred and the most cost-efficient way of connecting those disparate systems together. So that wraps things up for today. I hope this was helpful in giving you just some quick insights around how blockchain is evolving and what Globus is expecting to see and support as we move into 2018. So as always, we'd welcome a chance to discuss your B2B invoicing and payments, as well as initiatives that you have coming up. So I've included my contact info, as well as Rob from sales. So please feel free to reach out. And again, thanks for joining, and we look forward to seeing everyone again next year.